Hoya have a tendency to struggle and can look kind of like junk, right? This is not stunning and beautiful. This is not something that we want to post up on social media, or that we're going to go running to our friends and be like, look at this, it's beautiful. I like the particular foliage on these, but neither one of these is particularly super attractive and say, wow, you know? So how do we get there? There's a couple of different things that we can do. I'm going to be going over the 5 of them today. Hello, I'm Lauren, that awkward plant girl. Welcome back to my channel. It's so good to see you guys. Thank you guys for popping in. Here are my 5 easy Hoya care tips to make your Hoya look amazing. Tip number 1 is properly pruning your Hoyas. You may have heard out there that you can prune your Hoyas and that will cause them to get bushy. This is absolutely true. This will totally happen. Do not prune your 2-leaved Hoya. Do not do it. Do not prune your 4-leaved Hoya. Prune your 8-leaved Hoya. Okay? So, and you actually need to decide what makes your Hoya beautiful for you before you start doing any kind of pruning. Because Hoya are so amazing, there are a lot of different reasons why someone might be growing a Hoya. Are you growing this Hoya for the blooms? Or are you growing this Hoya for the foliage? You can eventually have both. It just takes a while to get both. So if you have a small Hoya and you're trying to figure out which you're wanting, definitely keep this in mind, that the proper pruning is going to affect this. When you prune your Hoya, it resets the vine to a certain extent. So it's less likely to bloom, and it's going to take longer for that particular vine to bloom. So if you were hoping to get a bloom on that vine, do not be cutting that Hoya for a while. Make sure that it gets pretty long and that it's actually maturing, and then once it starts to bloom, then it's matured to a certain point. And then it will continue to bloom over time. But if you start chopping it before that, it's just going to keep restarting and regrowing. It'll regrow a new vine, and it takes longer to bloom. Especially if the Hoya that the original cutting, the propagation that you're now growing was from, if it was from a younger Hoya, then it's probably going to take a while as well. If it was from an older, more mature Hoya, then it's not going to take as long to come to full maturity, and it's not going to take as long to start to bloom. But Hoya can take up to 2 years to go from this little teeny tiny 2-leaf plant that was propagated all the way to an actual mature Hoya that's going to be blooming. So keep that in mind. How long do you want to have to wait? So if having a fuller, bushier plant and more plants in that pot is going to make you happier in that long term while you're waiting for the bloom, then yes, absolutely. Prune the Hoya. Make sure you're pruning in between the nodes. Make sure every Hoya propagation you have has a node. Their leaves are going to grow in really small, and then they'll get bigger and bigger as they mature. So the bigger leaves are going to be the more mature leaves. So make sure that you're not pruning your Hoya too soon. Make sure that it actually has a bunch of different leaves on it. And when you prune a Hoya, it's going to go back to the next node underneath that pruning point, and it's going to sprout a secondary shoot off of that. And that's how that works. That's how it makes your plant more bushy. Sometimes it may go down to the base and start a secondary shoot at the base. It depends on how mature the plant is, the specific variety of plant. Like, there are so many variables for that to happen, but what usually happens, I want to say 99% of the time, is it's going to go back to that last node and it's going to shoot off from there, and that's how you're going to get a bushier plant. So plan on that when you're trying to cut and prune your particular Hoya, especially if you're dealing with a single vine. And then if you want to propagate that vine, the best way that I have found to propagate Hoya is in a sealed terrarium with bark and sphagnum moss, or you can do just a perlite prop box, and that works really, really well. Those are the ways that you can make a fuller, more bushier, pruned plant. Next up is an epiphytic foliar spray. This is just liquid plant fertilizer put in a spray bottle, mixed with some water, and just sprayed on the foliage of your Hoya. Hoya are epiphytic. They grow on trees. They're hanging off the trees. They're hanging in the bark and the moss, and they're just climbing up, or they're dangling over, depending on the specific variety and how big it is and how mature it is. The way that they are obtaining nutrients is just gathering it from what the trees are dropping around them. It's in the ambient humidity. They're getting it from a little bit of the moss, that sort of thing. As things break off growing on the trees, it's blowing in the wind. And then microscopic particles are being picked up of all of these nutrients from your particular Hoya. And that's how they grow. They're not growing in dirt in the ground. They're epiphytic plants. So when we're giving them fertilizer in the soil, it works to some extent, but it is not the optimum way to do it. Especially if you were looking to get blooms, definitely go with a foliar spray. Orchid spray works really well if you don't want to mix up your own. That's what I started with, because when I heard this, I thought that that was kind of, it made sense, but I don't know if it's going to work. It's totally been a game changer for my Hoya. There is always new growth popping up after I am done spraying these. You can get just the standard orchid spray and spray that on your Hoya, or you could take a liquid fertilizer, just any kind of mister or spray bottle or whatever, put that in there, and then just mist your plants. I do it once a week. It's been game changing. I do it early in the morning so that it can be absorbed, or I do it in the evening time. Generally, I prefer to do it in the evening time so that the plants can kind of soak it up and absorb it, and it's not going to be evaporating off, especially since most of my Hoya are actually outside right now in the heat. So in the evening time is what works best for me, but your conditions may be different. Speaking of Hoyas outside, I put my Hoyas outside so they can have great light. I do not have the greatest of light, especially up here with these little tiny plant windows. This is pretty much all the light I have up here other than what I supplement with grow lights. And my home is old, so it can only handle so much wattage coming through the breaker. So, and some of these really amazing lights take a lot of wattage, unfortunately. I ended up putting my Hoya outside. It works out really, really well for me. In a window is fine because the window will actually break up some of that light for you, but when it's outside in direct light with the sun just beating down on them all day, on the western side, it doesn't work out so well. A lot of those Hoya will burn, especially if you haven't acclimated them. So don't take them directly from your home, stick them on your porch in the sun, because they're all going to extra crispify and it's just not going to be a pretty scene. That's not how you get pretty Hoya. But if you stick them back under a porch, you have a tarp, under a tree, so they're getting indirect bright light and it's constant all day, you're going to see beautiful sun stressing on your plants. You can also put them directly under a grow light. Most grow lights are going to do that really, really well. Most grow lights are not going to be able to give the same amount of strength as the sun. What our grow lights give is basically indirect bright light for the most part, unless you have some fabulous, super expensive grow light. What most of us are using is basically indirect bright light when we're like this far away from the grow light. So that's what most people are working with at this point. So don't be afraid to put your Hoya kind of close to it. If you see some browning, that's bad, pull it back. But if you see that it's starting to get some purples, some reds, some pinks, those sorts of colors on the leaves, that's sun stressing. That means you're giving it a good amount of light and it's okay. So that's just a way for the plant to protect itself, but it also gives it beautiful coloration. It doesn't really harm the plant to do that. A lot of Hoya collectors will actually collect plants based on the color of the foliage when they're sun stressed, and they work really hard to get it sun stressed. So keep that in mind when you're picking your Hoya. What kind of flowers do they have? What kind of foliage do they have? Do you like them when you're green? Do you like them when they're sun stressed? Like, these are really, really cool things to dig into. And the flowers have different smells. Like, certain ones will smell like chocolate, certain ones smell like cinnamon, certain ones smell like lemon, certain ones smell like urine. It just depends. But when you give a plant really, really good light, when you give Hoya in particular really, really good light, they are going to do these things for you. Make sure that you're keeping that in mind when you're picking your plant and when you're giving it good light. Do you really want these things to happen? But yes, giving your Hoya some really good light is a great, easy way for you to get a very beautiful plant. It's also going to increase their growth exponentially. Next up, give your Hoya some higher humidity. If your Hoya is very slow growing, it's not really doing anything at all, it's taken a while, try amping up the humidity a little bit. Put it in a terrarium tank or a little jar, or just get a humidifier. You can stick it on a pebble tray. There's a lot of different ways to up your humidity. Do not just go misting your plants. That isn't a real one. It's not a real one. It's not a real one. It drives me freaking nuts. I can't believe that in 2024 we are still telling people to mist their plants. It's been debunked for 20 years. But there are articles out there, and when you go and research how to increase humidity for your plant, it's literally the first thing that they list still. It's insane. So skip over the misting the plants. Do literally anything else. Anything else works better, for reals. But generally speaking, anything over 50% is going to make most Hoya pretty happy. So if you can get your ambient humidity to 50% or higher, they're going to be pretty thrilled with that. Anything more than 80%, certain Hoya will start to struggle. Kind of keep that in mind. There is such a thing as too much humidity, but aiming for 50 to 80% is a really, really good way to get your Hoya to really pop off and grow a lot. Tip number 5 is to pay attention to your Hoya's reaction to temperatures. Certain Hoya like certain temperatures. Hoya Bella likes it cold. That's why Hoya Bella and I do not get along so well. She likes a cooler temperature. I have a very, very warm temperature in the summertime. My plant room can get up to 100 degrees. Because heat rises and my plant room is on the second story of an old drafty farmhouse, so it is what it is. It gets really toasty up here. We have fans and stuff, but it's definitely very humid and very warm up here. I have some Hoya that struggle with it, so I put them outside. Some Hoya inside are totally okay with it. It just depends on the Hoya. So you want to research the particular Hoya and see which ones are going to be good with temperatures that you have in your conditions. Most Hoya are going to want to stay 60 degrees or higher. I don't know very many Hoya that would do anything under 60 degrees. Then it starts to get a little too chilly and they get cranky. Some Hoya are going to handle lower temperatures better than other Hoyas. But once you start getting into like 75, 80, 90, those are tropical warmer conditions. So some Hoya like to stay a little bit below that. I do have a video on beginner friendly Hoya that are temperature friendly and can handle temperatures either way. So if you want a starting point, you can watch that video. I'll link it after this one for you guys. But definitely make sure you're checking on the temperatures that your Hoya needs and the locations that they came from. If you can just search their origin and then the temperatures of that location, then generally keep it around that and it will be fine. And I actually remembered another thing. So bonus tip here, woohoo, it's going to be making your Hoya climb. If you can get your Hoya to climb, they're going to mature faster. They're going to grow faster. It doesn't have to be anything intricate. It can just be a wire going from one side of the pot to the other and then you twist that Hoya vine around it. It can be literally just climbing the wall with little push pin hooks. It can be giving it a stick. That works too. You can use anything around your home to try to make it climb. Like there's a lot of different things. Generally speaking, if it's a really good growing Hoya, like a Hoya pubicalis or a Hoya australis, they are going to be reaching out, searching, and twisting themselves around whatever the heck they can get a hold of. Other plants, other pots, trellises, bookshelves, you name it, they're going to try to climb because that's what they do in nature anyway. But it's going to make your plant grow faster. It's going to make your plant look fuller. The leaves will get bigger faster. And especially if you're giving them really good light, they'll get more splotches and speckling on them because they'll be closer to the light. And that's going to bring out all of their individual little features that we all freaking adore. So definitely let your Hoya climb. They are climbers. You can make them trail. They'll look really good trailing as well if you can get them bushy enough. But if you only have like one vine or two vines, they look way cooler climbing and it'll help it grow faster so you can propagate it more and get a more bushy plant at the bottom. You can also switch them over to being a bushy plant after they've been climbing for a while as well and kind of trade off as needed. All right, so that's all I have for care tips today. Definitely check out this next video and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're into plants and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.